This video is about reading comprehension. I've had so many parents come and talk to me and ask me why it is that their child can decode or sound out words, but then when they get to the end of the paragraph, it seems like they have no idea what they read. And the answer to this is in partly how we teach kids how to read, which is unfortunate, but also hopeful because we can just change that, right? We can get a different result. So here's how to teach reading in a way that fosters comprehension from the beginning, okay? So mostly there's two main things you can do when a child is first learning to decode words to foster that comprehension, okay? One is when they are first beginning to sound that first word out, instead of, so for example, if the word is dog, D-O-G, and you hear them say d-a-g, and then they blend it a little closer so it sounds like dog, and it's pretty close, you know? The parent that hears that might just say, great job, you got it, right? But really, in that child's mind, they haven't fully made the connection between those sounds and all of their experiences with dogs, right? There's a part in your brain that just heard those sounds, right? And then there's a different part of your brain that holds all of your memories and your feelings about dogs, right? And we need to connect those two parts of your brain in order to teach comprehension. That's what it is. So link these words that you see on the page to experiences and knowledge that you already have in your brain, right? So instead of just saying, great job, you got it, you never want to say the word that a child decoded until you are absolutely sure that they understand that word. So this is what I would do if that child said dog. I would say, what's that? And then they would say, my dog is brown. Or they would say, I don't know. And then they'd try to sound the word out again until they could connect that series of sounds with their experience. And it takes, some kids get this really quick, and it really just has to do with the synapses that already exist in your brain. Some kids are still building those memory synapses and connecting their brains up. So some kids get this quick, and sometimes it takes a lot of practice. So if your child's not getting it right away, just stick with it and practice it and don't give up. Because if you just move on, it's just going to cause so many problems down the road. You really want to nip this in the bud, because what's reading if you can't understand anything that you're reading, right? It's totally pointless. It's like the same as not reading. So really focus on that. Okay, so rule number one is never say the word out loud after they read it. Ask them, what's that, okay? The other thing you can do is when they're having a hard time sounding that out or blending, if they were saying something like d-a-g, d-a-g, and couldn't put it together and get the meaning, instead of me hijacking that situation like I like to do and saying dog, can you hear it? Dog. That's normally what I would do. Instead of doing that, a great thing to do is to give them what's called a semantic cue, which means give them a hint about the word's meaning, okay? So if they were having a hard time sounding out dog, I would say, what's an animal that says bark, bark? Or this is an animal even, or this animal chases cats, or something like that. So then they're thinking about your clue in your head and they find the word dog, and then they see it, right? They connect it, dog, oh, now I see it, and that's immediately linked. I blended these sounds, and now I have this meaning, right? So if we do those two things when we're teaching kids to decode at the word level, then they will understand things when they're putting words into phrases and sentences and paragraphs, right? But if we skip it at the word level, there's no way they don't even have a chance to understand a paragraph, right? And the reason that this happens so much, unfortunately, is because in so many systems of education, they really focus on something called fluency, which is how quickly you read and how smoothly you read, right? Does your reading sound all choppy? Does it take you a minute to read 3 words? You know, how fast are you reading, essentially? So the kids are trained to sound the word out and move on, sound the word out and move on, keep going, make it smooth, make it fast, because that's measurable, right? And then they don't really go back and check and make sure that you understood that phrase. Does that make sense? So it's kind of unfortunate. And reading smoothly is important. It's actually a part of comprehension, because if it takes you, a minute to sound out 4 different words, by the time you've sounded out the 4th word, you've forgotten what the first word is and you can't make sense of the whole sentence. So to build that at the phrase level, what I do is check comprehension on each word. So say the phrase is, the cat drank the milk, right? So we're going to do our semantic cues, and we're going to make sure that they understand each of those words as we're sounding them out. And then when they get to the end of the phrase, I will say the phrase again for them. The cat drank the milk, right? So they did all of the hard work of sounding that out, and at these beginning levels where you're trying to teach them to comprehend, I will say the phrase for them, and then I'll ask them what happened. And then they will say, the cat drank the milk, or tell you a story about it, or whatever pops into their head. As long as it's somewhat relevant, you will say, wow, I'm so proud of you. It's wonderful. So that, in essence, is how to build comprehension at the beginning levels of reading.